let's jump in to Central Asia, otherwise known as the 4 Stands Tour that we have reworked for you guys for fall. I can understand not being patient because we have all been waiting a long time to get out and to do these things. So let me start by showing you a little bit of a map, an overview of where we will begin. In the center there, Tashkent. You're gonna remember that one for trivia going forward, because, I'm gonna blow it if Jonathan wanted to use this on his bus. Very popular and fun question around the dinner tables are national capitals that begin and end with the same letter. Tashkent is one, there's your hint. We'll begin there as we move through Uzbekistan. Flight over to Nakus. We travel by road down to Khiva. You'll see us move over to Bukhara. The train ride to Samarkand, which is so lovely. First border crossing, making it over to Penjikent. Those are always a little bit, I won't say dubious, but potentially daunting. It gets your exercise. Penjikent down into Dushanbe to Kujan, back to Tashkent again, and then we take a hard right over into Almaty with our day trip out to the Charan Canyon, Bishkek, Istanbul, and everybody flies home from Bishkek. That's in a nutshell, basically everything we will see on the tour, but let's jump into the meat of things. Some of the highlights, we all kind of put our heads together on these. It does include definitely Khiva, the outdoor museum of a city. It's, you talk of the Silk Road, it really is its own little spot there. It was such an important seat, and it really feels like you're stepping back to that time when you spend time there. It really is a sight to behold. Holy Bukhara, the Silk Road city, and a sensual delight. All sorts of senses fire up on that one. The famed Samarkand, architectural wonders, the 3 mausoleums there on the Rajasthan Square, really an impressive sight and a fun way to spend a day. The mountain drive through Tajikistan, including the beautiful Iskanderkul, the colors, the heights, the scale at which you see things is really so impressive. Almaty, the most European city in Central Asia, you know, you're kind of sort of hoping for Borat to turn a corner. He never does, but it really just is an impressive town. Istanbul, the lake, is a gorgeous setting and the 2nd highest alpine lake in the world. The colors, once again, are just stunning, and the photographic opportunities. The peoples of Central Asia, super friendly, famous hospitality. You're gonna feel like you've got an Italian mama trying to feed you when they bring you the meals. Everything is very, very generous, and the smiles are very, very quick. Expect to say a lot of assalamu alaikum, to which you will return alaikum assalam. Get a little practice in that, because people are very excited to greet you, talk to you, and find out where you're from. And then the last note there is the Charan Canyon. We do have some photographs, but it is Kazakhstan's mini Grand Canyon. The Grand is definitely still applicable when we talk about this one. The activity level and any concerns. The main reason for the activity level of 2, which is a little bit higher than when we get into some of the more casual tours, this is simply because of rougher conditions. And it's not that rough, it's not what we're used to. The roads of the regions can be a little lumpy, bumpy. Some of the days are very long, it's weighted, so we kind of get those out of the way at the start of the tour, a little break, and then you'll have a little bit of hard work again at the end. That's why we talk about Central Asia fatigue. Things are just a little bit different than we know them. They work a little differently, a little faster, a little slower, a little bumpier, and the possibility of sickness. These are places that we are not used to, our bodies aren't used to, and it can get a tiny bit repetitious. Not to say it's a bad thing at all, but there are great similarities between the stands as much as there are differences. So sometimes you get a little bit tired of some of the things that repeat. There's no drama involved, but we get concerned. And so that's one of the things that we'll point out to people. So expectations are dangerous things, right? It is very easy for you to take some time off from some of the more strenuous activities, some of the city tours that are done by foot. If you wanted to put yourself in a taxi and go home, or hop, skip, and a jump a couple places, that's easy. But the luggage at the borders, that is the biggest example of, sorry, we don't have an option. We don't have a vehicle necessarily to help us. Sometimes by wonders, they're there and we have to get someone to take us where we need to be. But sometimes it's a very long walk. And sometimes, only once on the tour that I led did we have to use the green door. There simply was not a toilet stop. So ladies on the left-hand side of the road, gentlemen on the right, and we took care of business. It can be a little bit rough, but honestly, worth every bit of effort because they are just such original places. And you'll notice once you start talking about them, how many people don't even know where the stands are or what they are. The longer days, as I mentioned, generally skewed towards the start of the tour. So you can kind of hit the ground where you're still full of adrenaline, and then we make it a little bit easier for you to continue on. Visas and entry requirements. These are, again, fluid. Flexible will be the term, not just because that's the way they were before, but of course with COVID, it definitely means we have a few more needs to tuck and roll sometimes. But at this point, as far as Uzbekistan is concerned, US citizens do require an entry visa. It is easy to get electronically. The e-visa format should be available from March. Canadians don't need visas at this point, not ahead of time. Your PCR tests currently required for entry, but that is expected to be lifted soon. Tajikistan, no visas required for either US or Canadian citizens. The PCR test still required. Kazakhstan, much the same, and Kyrgyzstan as well. They are closer to lifting the PCR test needs, as far as we know, than the rest for the fully vaccinated. But again, those could be fluid. We do expect better news as the year progresses. Oh, please, oh, please, oh, please. Because of course we always have to put in that barring any unseen variants. So you just never know in this crazy, crazy world. But at the moment, everything looks like it should go without any big hoops or scoops to jump through. Packing. This one's a fun one. I always like the rule of never pack more than you can carry yourself. And it applies in this tour, especially with the border crossings. They can be taxing. There can be some very long walks in between. Sometimes you get some young soldiers at the border crossings that just need to see all of the paperwork. And it's sort of adorable because you can tell when they're looking at it that they can't really read what they're seeing, but you know, that's their job and they've got to make you sweat a little bit. And then of course the walk, that's where you remember, pack lightly. Weather can vary a lot on the tour. It is usually quite hot in Uzbekistan with daytime highs around 30 degrees Celsius, 86 Fahrenheit. And it can get cold in Kyrgyzstan. I had full snow on the tour that I ran a few years back. Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, they run the gamut from near freezing to 25 degrees or 77. The boat at Isikul can also run to extremes once you're on the lake and you get any sort of breezes off there. So layers are a good secret. The plug-in types, I just mentioned that because it's got the round pins and voltage is generally 220. Not too many electronics still require an adapter for that, but that is something to consider. But it's the round pins that you want to be able to plug in and out of or have an adapter for that. And it goes without saying, you can never go wrong with good shoes and walking sticks. A lot of unevenness, and as we move through the different fortresses and different places, that just gives you a bit of confidence as you move about, especially have collapsible walking sticks. They go in the bag, really can't hurt to bring them if you've got them. There's some examples. One of our days where we're all in short sleeves in the sunshine, and then you can tell by the color of my poor little nose there on Lake Isikul that it can definitely get cold, and it is very atypical to see a downspout in the distance, but it just sort of seemed perfect on that day. I have captioned that with, "There is not nearly enough cognac in this coffee." It was a delightful day, but whew, definitely on the chilly side. Bring all your layers when we do that one. Arrivals into Tashkent really are pretty simple. There's a relatively new terminal at the airport that make things pretty seamless. It's quite modern, lots of signage, and easy to get through, really. Taxis are available as you leave the airport, but it is important to know the general price that you should be paying. So you can make sure that you negotiate a fair deal. We have what we call taxi sharks at the airport. Sometimes we have had people with transfers get scooped by a very good talking person who convinces them they are the transfer driver. All of this information will be available to you when you're doing your bookings. Our agents are there to help on the other end, but these are just a couple things that we do point out before you take off, simply so that you are aware and you don't get ripped off and you can't get taken on a ride. ATMs and exchange kiosks are around. Hours can vary, but if you would like to swap USD, it is not too difficult, but just please remember to bring the nicest bills you have ever seen. There can't be pen marks, there can't be a pinhole, bends or folds, or the older versions of the dollars. There's some old US hundreds in circulation. That sometimes frightens money changers off. They need them to be perfect. They will hand you back a pile of wrinkly, messy money. You don't get pristine notes back, but they do want pristine notes to be handed over. I really did not ever have troubles drawing from the ATMs either. So just keep that in mind, that there is availability and the power of the group. We do have the leaders that are able to help us with stuff, our local guides. And we recommend that you stick to bottled water at all times, even when brushing your teeth. We recommend that. I'm cheeky, I brush my teeth from the tap, but I always figure that a tiny little bit just helps make your system a little stronger if you ever accidentally get too much. So something to consider, and that will be in your notes on arrival. The money issues, we do bop through 4 countries, so there are 4 different currencies for you to get to know. Prices seem relatively similar across the stands. I did have a piece in there to match like what a bottle of water cost. Generally it's less than $1 for you to get something like that, but just for peace of mind, you can see the kind of math that you'll be doing. $1 US becomes 11,000 some in Uzbekistan, a Canadian dollar, 8,500. Yeah, that's not the easiest math, but once you get a bit of a gauge for it, you'll figure it out. We use the Tajik simoni, the Kazakh tengi, and back to the sum for in Kyrgyzstan. Very relative ideas of where the dollars sit right now in their exchange. Our local guides can be really helpful when we get to and from the border. They often have currency of the next or last country and are able to do swaps for us. You can buy them out. They help us, the tour leaders, with that quite a bit, so it's nice. And again, the mention that if you do bring USD, please make sure it is pristine, because they will not accept it or make a big deal and not give you the money that you want for it, because in turn they don't get accepted for them. There's an example of what I need as a tour leader to carry around with me when we first arrive. We meet up with the local agent who helps us with things, and you'll walk away from the office with a paper lunch bag full of money because we go through stacks and stacks of cash when we're dealing with the large groups. You will want a bigger sized wallet or something that you're able to carry things in. Those new money belts where you roll it all up and stick it in the waistband, you don't need anything like that there, and obviously you can see it won't be that helpful. As far as transportation on the tour, we do use primarily the large coach through Uzbekistan. In Tajikistan, we split up and downsize, a combination of the Mercedes vans as we move around in Penjikent and Kujan, 4-wheel drives for the mountain drive day, and then minivans as we move around in Dushanbe, a little bit of space from the group if that's something you would need by then. We do use a coach, Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, and of course the flights from Tashkent to Nakus, and then again from Tashkent to Almaty. Nowadays, the vehicles are generally of good quality. Sound systems also generally of good quality. You should be able to hear things. We do use walkie-talkies when we're driving through the Tajik area around Penjikent. They can be a little bit tougher, but you know what? We'll make do. Everything will be heard, and we can always go over stuff at dinner if you missed out on things. We do use one high-speed train on the tour between Bukhara and Samarkand. The tour bus takes our large bags onwards for us earlier in the day, and so we just get dropped off in the afternoon train with shoulder bags, that sort of thing, and then they come and meet us in Samarkand. So a little bit of a different view out the window that way, but everything should generally be comfortable and to your needs. There is the train station that we spend a little bit of time waiting at. You can grab some snacks and take them on board the train as we head across the desert in there. Food. Meat is a big component of the meals. A vegetarian meal there only has one meat in it. All the rest are varied and very meat delicious. Tasty meat for sure, lots of it, and the meals do get a little bit repetitive, but it's 3 weeks of your life and you don't have to do it again if you don't want to. We do our best to put salads on the table. They are mostly cooked vegetables because of health concerns. We take care of you that way, but we do need you to get your vitamins and your minerals and all that stuff. Green beans, beets, everything is a little bit different than what we imagine a salad to be, but they are tasty in their own right. We do find most of you get a little bit sick at some point, just a little bit of tummy trouble, but it'd be worse to not get some veggies and salads and all that stuff in you, because that's what helps carry you through the day. Those with dietary restrictions, they can generally be met, but again, it can be even more repetitive in that case. I don't want to put you off. We just want to be realistic. I frankly love it. Expect to be served shashlik, that is like a shish kebab, the meat on sticks. Plav, a very typical dish featuring rice, and the very popular drink, ayran, made from yogurt. I really suggest everybody gets that in that for the first few days, because then you get some of the biotics and the good bugs from the area, and that can help give you that iron constitution you need to get the rest of the way. And then we'll see who is game. Fermented camel's milk, and I forgot to type in there mare's milk, horse milk, as we move through different places. It is not for the weak, but again, if you're there for the right reasons, it's definitely something worth trying and then telling everybody that you did. There is an example of the shashlik on the sticks, plav on your plate with some roast garlic on top, and the ayran there in the bottom in the glass. Even that first day, if you have to just plug your nose and drink. Again, the local bugs, they're good to have in your belly and to keep you safe. Hotels on the tour. We call them they are a Western three-star, I should say, considered to be 4-star there. Comfortable, good locations. You're not gonna find any crazy fanciness, but they're all easily will meet your needs and most of your comforts. The most basic that we come to will be in Penjikent, in Tajikistan. It almost feels a little like a homestay. It's really quite lovely, but they're very simple. The nicest is in Dushanbe, and there exists a real mix in between. Rooms are generally large. That's not a thing. There's no Tokyo style hotel rooms on this one. Most of the comforts that you need are there, as I mentioned. Breakfast will be interesting to see going forward. Traditional style, mostly cooked and continental options available. What we'd seen in the past was more buffet style, but we'll see what happens post-COVID with how everybody adapts. We'll see if there's any major changes there. But the hotels generally are varied and interesting and well worth coming on the trip for. Little snapshot of Uzbekistan as we move into the day-to-day itinerary here. You'll see the major stops there circled in the black pen, but gives you a little bit of a picture of the over area, including Turkmenistan, which I wish we could do, but another day. Your arrival in Tashkent. This first day is mostly about getting you settled. Transfers are available through Adventures Abroad. Are quite reasonable, but of course you will need to get your cash to pay for them. I highly recommend you get on the metro. You will have some free time. We find a lot of flights arrive earlier in the morning, even though we won't get anything going until dinner that night or the orientation meeting. So we do recommend the Chorsu Bazaar as something for you to do on your own. Quite easy to do by metro, and a great way to just sit and people watch, because you get people that come in from the outlying areas, and we do quite a quick visit the next afternoon. So if that's something that would be up your alley, that's something to consider. And even just riding the metro, each station is unique with different Art Deco styles back to the Soviet influence. And you can now stop and take photographs and really enjoy the views. Like, look at that. Most of us have nothing like that in our major cities. I call Vancouver home, and SkyTrain looks nothing like that. It really is beautiful as you move through and about. Day 2. Now, here we go. We're going to go see Tashkent and begin to discover the lessons of the 4 M's. They factor heavily into our tours: mosques, madrasas or schools, the mausoleums or burial sites, and minarets, the towers. They feature very heavily in the next few while. We will visit one of each that day as we see the old city. We spend time at Chorsu Bazaar, as I mentioned, traditionally dressed people who have come into the city to sell their wares from the countryside. We will continue with a bit more of an orientation of Tashkent itself. Photo stops, when possible, at Independence Square and Amir Timur Square. And then our final stop in the afternoon is the Applied Arts Museum. Kind of an odd name for stuff. It's the textiles, metal, woodwork, ceramics, music, all featured in a beautiful old building. And it's something that you can wander through guided or on your own. If you have an affinity for one more than the other, you can easily spend some time enjoying that. I included a photo here of some bread being cooked at the Chorsu Bazaar. You can see it inside of the oven there baking. You'll have lots of this beautifully stamped and flavored bread. And then the Independence Square, one of the shots that we take, you'll see lots of Soviet influence in things, but of course, lots of updated sites, lots of changes. What a tumultuous time it's been in the last few decades for them. And it's just such a treat to be able to be there. Day 3, we will go from Tashkent to Nakus, spending our time in Khiva. It is a big day and it starts early, but it's a beautiful day. The flight to Nakus, the capital of the autonomous region of Karakalpakstan. That's how I get back to our 5 stands. It's a bit of a bonus stand. You don't really notice much about it, but on paper, it is something different. We begin at the Sovietsky Museum. It features a collection of Stalinist-era banned art, cultural artifacts that were collected over time by Igor Sovietsky. His story is amazing. And your homework for the trip will be to watch the Desert of Forbidden Art. It puts into perspective the amazing treasure trove that he was able to collect under the watch of people without getting caught. He really is a great, great story. Even if you decide you're going to wait to give up on the trip, it's still a wonderful documentary to see, The Desert of Forbidden Art. It was available at Apple last I checked. You might even be able to you'll find the trailer for sure on YouTube if you want to take some time today or tomorrow to have a look at that. Just make a note because it really is worth seeing. Back on the bus, we will visit 2 of the Alik Kala, or 50 fortresses of the area. Toprak Kala, which allows us to wander through the mud walls and excavated rooms that stand 2,000 years after they were built, and Ayaz Kala, which was built on a bit of a grander scale, allowing for the most commanding views of the area. And we spend our night in the walled city of Khiva, or normally our hotel is just on the outskirts of it. So you're in a modern setting, hoping you get one of the rooms on that side. So on your balcony, you can look upon history and just be so happy that you're there. Drink it all in. It really is stunning. The photos that we've included here, upper right-hand side is the first I mentioned, the wall city that has been excavated that we will walk through. But on the left, on the grander scale, that is looking from the fortress in the lower right-hand side back up. And you can see across the top all of the area that we're able to explore in the fortresses. And from that top vista, we look down on that wee fortress in the distance. But again, just such a massive, massive scale. And to understand that all of that has just been out in nature this entire time and remains. You can almost hear the footsteps falling as you walk through if you use your imagination hard enough. Day 4, we will spend inside the walls of Khiva. Today, we enjoy the relaxed walking tour of the outstanding open-air museum-like city of Khiva. The 4 M's come back once again. We throw in a minaret or 2. One of them is the marker to find your way back out at the end of the day. And we'll learn all about the importance of this city as it existed and one of the main stops along the Silk Road. We do the bulk of our sightseeing before lunch. It's a big morning, but then you'll have the rest of the afternoon, depending on your energy levels, to see all that you can see, all that you can fit in. And if you wish, you can do some climbing up to the tops of the walls for an overview and great photography opportunities. I know it's not something that Adventures Abroad focuses on, but it is also a fun shopping stop. The afternoon will be free for you to explore. And then one of the highlights of my trip is the green noodles that we like to serve you for dinner that night. They're served with dill, and they're cool with sour cream. They're made from dill. That's where they get their green color. It's usually a summer dish, and it's a bit of a treat, something really different that we don't see otherwise. This, we stole the Alamy stock photo because I just wanted to give you that overview of the walled city of Khiva, just the size of it. Each of the blue dots is one more thing to see. So you can imagine the richness of that afternoon that you have for yourself to go and look and have a peek. And it's pretty hard to get turned around. There'll be someone that can help you if you're one of those people with no sense of direction, but there's always sort of a high point to find, and I know we'll get you home. Day 5, Khiva to Bukhara. This is a big driving day, almost 8 hours on the bus. We have to cover 480 kilometers, or about 300 miles, which, yeah, we would normally do in a lot less time, but we don't get to move quite as quickly on their roads. And we do make some stops along the way just to shake your legs. There's a wonderful gas stop with a dog that I cannot wait to get back and visit with in the desert before we arrive in the ancient city of Bukhara. We'll give you some time to walk and stretch your legs right there around the hotel before we head to dinner, which hopefully we will be able to serve up the emir's ears. It is a deep fried tortellini-like treat. They're very, very tasty. And you'll see, if you wish, you could wash it down with one of the local beers. You'll notice that is a light beer in the photograph. It is 11%. Who's feeling brave? That's 1.2 liters, and I believe I was bragging to my friends that that bottle cost me less than $4. So yeah, you are warned. Day 6, we'll spend our day checking out Bukhara. We explore the old town on foot. It is a historic center according to the UNESCO designation of a World Heritage Site. The highlights of which include the 17th century Labby House with its pool for photographs to get the reflections. Always looking out for opportunities like that where you can just get the absolute beautiful picture to take home. It was once the tallest minaret in Asia, Kalan Minaret. It'll feature in our day as well, as will the elegant mausoleum of Ismail Samoni, which was completed around 905. AD, so a deep delve into history. There should be some free time for you to explore the old city on your way as well. And the historic site is home to artisans that hawk their wares. Again, I know we don't focus on shopping, but collectors that are interested, ceramics, needlecraft, wool carpet, and the pichak knives, very popular in the area, are all display, and that is a great day for you to plan on having a look at things like that. There you can see the 20 pillars on the mosque, but we joke that it is actually the 40 pillars because there is a pond in front of that, so you can get the reflection that I talked about. Ismail Samoni's mausoleum up on the right-hand side, and then the ark or the fortress down in the bottom center. That's a big, beautiful day. And you start to see the repetition of colors there. It's either sandy or it's blue. It's kind of fun that way. Day 7, Bukhara to Samarkand by rail. This is our fun train day. We'll finish up our sightseeing in Bukhara with a few hours, visiting the Satori Moki Kosa. That is the Emir's summer palace out on the edge of the city. We'll do a drive out there. If you are wanting to find embroidery, the famous Suzani style is on feature there, and there'll be many options to distract you. Many ladies wishing to sell their talents. The bus drops us back in town for a bit of a lunch or a quick shop for your snacks for the train. We'll use up anything else that we didn't get to see, and then enjoy some time at the train station waiting for our ride to Samarkand. About 2.5 hours by train, a little bit less than that, and really quite comfy and nice to have a look out. Modern trains, as you see, and we will be met in town and transferred to our hotel before dinner. On the left, a picture of the summer palace. You can see the pond again in front with the reflections you can always try to get. And then an example of one of the rail cars that we travel in. You can see how it's quite comfortable, quite modern, and just a different way to move, right? Day 8, Samarkand City Tour. This is the one that you have probably more than any of the rest. It's often called the Rome of the Orient. Was already just as Rome was being founded. So a little ironic that that would stick. We have a full day of sightseeing, including the Bibi Khanoum Mosque, the Mausoleum of Tamerlane, and the Observatory of Ulagbek, where the grandson of Tamerlane made astronomical observations in the pre-telescope era. It's always amazing to me what people were able to notice looking around, because sometimes you just forget to stop and look up, don't you? The highlight of the day will be the Registan Square, where 3 side-by-side mausoleums make quite the impressive sight to behold. Inside, various arts and crafts, demonstrations, sales, photography displays, the monuments, everything that was there prior to the Soviet reconstruction are shown on the walls and can really rip you back in time. Here's a photograph though, just to show you the grandeur. Is a little bit hard to get from the scope of that picture, but this was one of Jonathan's tours here with Registan in the background in the daytime, and then one of his beautiful nighttime photographs as well. Day 9, we will go from Samarkand to Penjkent in Tajikistan. Yes, as I say, this is the day you may remember that you packed. The coach takes us to the Uzbek border. We get stamped out, and then it's about 700 meters that we have to walk with all of our own stuff. Every once in a while in the past, there have been places where you can get a van or have a little bit of extra cash to get some help, but we will not count on anything like that. Just less than half a mile for those of you not sure about the 700 meters, and that takes us into Tajikistan. We'll drive through the foothills of the Fan Mountains on our way into Penjkent. On the way, the local guide shows us the ancient 4th millennium Sarazm ruins. We've got a photograph coming up in just a second to show you an example of the different ruins that are there. We will visit the Rudaki Museum of History, the Olandoko Mosque and Madrasa, because we can't have a day without some of those 4 M's, and the famed Penjkent ruins, which date from the Silk Road period once again. Some time in the local market is really fun here too. I still have what I call my Penjkent socks for $1. I managed to get 3 pair of socks because I accidentally flushed one. In Kiva. It was a funny day. It's really a cool standout. It's a surprise still to be looked at as something foreign. There's not too many places where the tourists are not usual, and people will stop and just stare at you. And if you can throw a couple words back to them, you'll have a friend forever. We enjoy a home-style dinner here as well. You can see an example of that in the center photograph. That's on the right-hand side, giving you the wave. That's Jonathan Hodgson, one of our senior tour leaders, who is very much a specialist of this region, and he is shoulder to shoulder with Boz, one of the local guides we've had for a very long time. And this is a family that invites us into their home for our dinner that night. On the left, one of the examples of the great smiles that you get to see in the market. That's some local honey that is on display down there. And then in the rocks, those are some of the ruins that we talk about. We'll walk through a few areas like that with Boz, hopefully, as our guide. Inshallah, inshallah, as we say. He really is a wonderful gentleman and so, so proud of his country. So it's really wonderful when we have someone like that who shares all this time with us. Day 10, we will move from Penjkent to Iskanderkul on our way to Dushanbe. It is another big driving day, so we've grabbed a little bit of happiness at the market, happiness or snacks as you may call them. We have a basic lunch stop planned, but the getting there is half the fun. As we move through, we'll be able to augment your lunch there. It's its own sort of interesting stop as well. We are spread out in the 4x4s, as I mentioned. Our guide generally rides in the middle with the walkie-talkie, so we're all able to hear things. You'll have a local guide and one will have the tour leader. So nobody's going to miss out on anything, but everybody does get a little bit more elbow room that day. Loads of photo stop opportunities, which is why it does take the full day for us to move. We get to quite the altitude when we visit Lake Iskander, topping out 2,500 meters or just over 8,000 feet. and the vistas truly are amazing. We should arrive into town between 4 and 5, heading out to dinner later on that evening. There is an idea of the way the color of the glacially fed water just punches through. And there on the beach of the lake as well, I am standing on a little platform taking that photograph. There's actually a little workout bench. You can lay back and do some bench presses if you're feeling like you've just been a little bit lazy. It's really quite a candid little photo spot as well. And we were lucky enough on my tour to come across this. It is a local wedding that was making its way through the town. You will be encouraged to dance. We were so lucky to stumble upon that one. The wedding party was moving from place to place to place. Of course, you're supposed to be giving a little bit of a cash gift to help them with the cost of their day or to help them set up in their future. And they are more than happy to pose for photographs if we could bump into something like that. I wish it could be arranged for every trip, but we may just be lucky. Day 11, Dushanbe. We'll spend our time seeing the city. It isn't a huge day of sightseeing, which is a little bit nice to have a shorter day. We remain divided up in smaller vehicles as we move through the town, though. We'll see the Museum of Antiquities, a beautifully large reclining Buddha, Tajik antiques, and the ancient wall paintings from Penjikent. And we stop in at the botanical gardens as well as checking out Navruz Palace. Tea houses are a very major part of Tajik culture. And though they have changed and evolved over the centuries, Navruz Palace is a very modern day version. It has cinema, restaurants, billiard halls, convention conference centers, even a wedding hall. From the outside, it looks like a modern day mall, and it really is an interesting stop to round out the day. It's not quite as authentic as some of the other sites that we see, but of course it is modern and it is new, and it's the way that Tajikistan has been evolving. We generally stay at the Hilton in town, so it's also a chance in the afternoon with that free time to treat yourself to a spa treatment or something a little bit kinder in the afternoon, if that's up your alley. There is a picture of the Navruz Palace from the outside. You can see just the mere size of it really is interesting to explore, and it does stand out as something very, very different, very modern in the city. Day 12, we'll travel from Dushanbe to Khujand. This morning we'll depart Dushanbe, heading back to the north. We have a little bit of backtracking, but hey, as we point out, it's a different view of the mountains, just from the other side. It's because of the border and the flight situation that we have to do this. We'll get back past the turnoff to Penjikent and then Khujand via the Sharistan Pass. Another stop, the town of Istravashan. Sorry, I'm going to screw that one up. I've been practicing it all morning. Istravashan, where we'll do a small city tour as well. Arriving in Khujand, that is the second largest city in Tajikistan, for a well-earned dinner. There is a little bit of a vista of the kind of roads that we travel that day going in the mountains, and a cheeky little comment on the side. Gravel or Dramamine, depending which country you're visiting from. If you are prone to motion sickness, you know the name of both of those. It's actually not too twisty and turny because of the grand scale. We just, yeah, you can see all of the areas that we get to cover, and I just can't wait to get back to see something like that again. Day 13, Khujand to Tashkent. We start our day with a visit to the Historical Museum of the Shog region. It is stunning in and of itself, but inside you'll see the restored Khujand forest wall. This is where it's been built in the old city, right inside the old city wall. We continue on to the large Parshanbe Bazaar and its nearby Friday Mosque, because the minarets, madrasas, mausoleums, and mosques, we got to get those in. After lunch, we drive about an hour to the Tajik-Uzbek crossing. We'll survive the border formalities and then continue to Tashkent for our return to the hotel there, which is about another 2 hours drive. So a bit of a busy day, big one. Getting to the hotel in the evening just in time for our last Uzbek meal. because the next day we take off. There you can see the example of the museum built inside the old city walls and the front of the bazaar, which is a great way to spend the day, either watching the people or sampling some of the treats that are there, nuts and dates, and of course, just food that is unfamiliar, which is always a little bit fun. Day 14, from Tashkent to Almaty in Kazakhstan. This is still a little bit dependent on the flight that day. Certain whether we'll fly earlier in the morning or later in the afternoon. So if we have the morning in Tashkent, we can finish up some of the sightseeing that we missed the first time around. Extras could include the Tashkent TV tower or the minor mosque. If our flight is in the morning, then we should be able to of the sightseeing in Almaty that we need to get done. That could include our visit to Pamphilov Park, where we find the famed Assumption Cathedral, or Zenkov's Cathedral, and then the Museum of Musical Instruments. So interesting. Flights will likely be on Air Astana, taking about an hour and a half. We do have an hour's time change there as we move. So it's a full day. And again, one of those flexible. We're not quite sure what will happen, but that'll become clearer as we get closer to takeoff day. There's some examples of what you'll see in the Pamphilov Park. It is really a place that locals do enjoy getting out, wandering around in, visiting the Beatles. I know it seems an odd thing to stumble upon in the middle of the park, but it is indeed there. There's a zoo. Kids are often hanging about. It really just is a lovely day. The day that I did the tour there, we did get to see the Golden Eagle. The falconry talents were being shown off, but obviously no guarantees. It is just a public space and a lovely place to wander. Day 15, we will finish up seeing Almaty, because again, it was a tiny bit questionable what we'd see the day before. Our aim is to get you on our excursion to Big Almaty Lake. It is not always available to us. It is weather dependent, but there is plenty of ways for us to tuck and roll around that. Alternative sightseeing includes the Medeo Ice Rink. It is the highest mountain. I'm just seeing my own typo there. Whoops, the highest mountain sports complex in the world. 10,000 square meters of surface area. It hosts speed skating, hockey, all sorts of outdoor winter fun. And Koktobe Hill, another alternative. It's famous for its sweeping views back down into the city. We'll visit the Central State Museum of Kazakhstan and more than likely make a metro station excursion for fun. Again, frozen in time and beautiful. Almaty is probably the most European-like destination that we will see in our time in Central Asia. And it really is quite a lovely town. There's some beautiful examples of what we could and will see. The cathedral in the Pamphilov Park, down to the metro stations, the high lake, the mountains, and of course, just the giant, beautiful smiles that we see on the people as we move about. Really a lovely, lovely day. Day 16, the new addition, one of the new additions as well. That is our Charon Canyon excursion. We'll have a full day there because it is a little bit on the outskirts of town, as you saw on the map at the introduction. It lies just east of Almaty, requiring roughly 3 hours drive. It is the mini Grand Canyon of Kazakhstan, although not much mini about it when we're there. You'll have a great opportunity to stretch your legs, relatively easy paths to move about the canyon, and the beautiful colors of the rock to satisfy the photographer deep in your soul if you have some fun exploring there. The picnic lunch we'll have packed is a nice little break, retracing our steps back to Almaty for the evening. Likely be a little bit pooped by the end of that, but look at what you get to take in. Really, truly, Mother Nature does some good work now, doesn't she? Yeah, I'm really glad we actually get to add that one. Day 17, Almaty on to Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan. A bit of travel today. We have an early departure for the Kazakh-Kyrgyz border. It's about 4 hours of driving, and we are rewarded with what is usually the easiest land border of the trip. We don't like to get too cocky about it, but it's not too tough. We finish with the border formalities and then make our way to Bishkek. We make a quick stop for lunch on the way, but we will check out the city partly by foot and partly with the help of our bus. The day includes the National Historical Museum, which was once an entire homage to Vladimir Lenin. 2 of the 3 floors now reflect more modern day Kyrgyzstan as its independent state. 1 floor has been left intact including a giant statue of Lenin leading the revolutionary masses. It's definitely an interesting stop. We should finish with enough time to allow for a bit of rest or some personal time for you to explore before dinner. There is an example, I'm actually standing on the steps of the museum that we visit, looking down into the square and into the main city. There's a university nearby, so you often run into a lot of students. Great bookshop. It really is a fun place to explore as well. And again, the photography and the sort of old Soviet style statues that you run into, same, but different all the way through these areas. Day 19, we will go from Bishkek to Karakol. This is one of the newer additions as well as we fill our days without Turkmenistan. In the morning, we'll set off on the roads towards Issyk-Kul. That is the second highest alpine lake in the world after Titicaca. We know you knew that. We pass some beautiful scenery on the way through the Bomb Gorge. We'll take the southern road around on the way to Karakol. It's a less built up side of the lake. Beautiful scenic mountains in the distance and the stunning colors of everything. We'll have a little side journey to the Jetty Oguz, which is lying in the south of Karakol, to see the Seven Bowls rock formation. Karakol itself is a small city with a real laid back kind of feel, featuring Russian style houses. It's the base for a number of nearby activities for the locals: hiking, skiing, relaxing at the lake in summer. Some photographs to get you excited about that. At the bottom, those are the redder stone is the Seven Bowls formation. And one thing, again, inshallah, God willing, we try to arrange for a falconry demonstration. You can see the golden eagle there with his mask, and one of the locals who would be a very doting father to the bird. It can't always be arranged, but we definitely make our efforts. As I mentioned, or maybe didn't mention, in the Pamphilov Park, we were able to spot somebody who was there allowing us to take photos with his golden eagle. And while they're masked and can't see, they're very, very calm. So it's a little bit hard, but I got to run my finger down his chest and he just stood there and let you. It's quite a magnificent bird. And hopefully we'll have opportunities to get you up close and personal to it. Okay, one of the last days as we get through our tour here, Karakol to Cholpan Ata. Today we do some more morning sightseeing of Karakol, including the unique Dungan Mosque featuring Chinese influences, interestingly, the wooden Russian Orthodox Church, and the Przewalski Museum, which is dedicated to the famed Russian explorer and naturalist. Onwards, we'll go to the east and northeast section of Issyk-Kul, beautiful lake with the destination of Cholpan Ata in our sights. Small lakeside villages that we cruise through, pastoralists out on horseback, herds of livestock, plenty of photo opportunities on this day as well. And in Cholpan Ata, we will see a huge outdoor petroglyph museum. My tour last time actually got to stumble upon another bridal party at that petroglyph museum. It's a small regional museum. We'll head out onto the blue waters of Lake Issyk-Kul for that cruise a little bit later on. And then we stay at a cute little resort near Cholpan Ata. Some photographic evidence of that. You can see the petroglyphs in the upper left-hand side, the jetty on the right, and then from the distance, a bit of a view of the lake. You can see the different colors. That one looks a little less stunningly blue just because of the way the day, but it can vary, obviously, with the weather. Really, really a fun time. So we will then continue our from Issyk-Kul, we'll move through Borana and back to Bishkek, traveling through the Bomb Gorge back to the big city. A couple stops on the way, the Borana Tower and the different that provide a beautiful backdrop for that. And then Tokmak, where we'll be able to watch some of the locals demonstrate ancient nomadic sports like cockbaroo. This is different than you've ever seen before and well worth our time. We head back to Bishkek for our last minute sites that we may have possibly missed, and or bonus visits like the Sum department store. It's right in the city center and just a way to see how the locals do things. Our final group dinner out at the nearby restaurant. And I want to show you some photographs of the things I was mentioning there. You can see the Borana Tower, a little historic evidence in and amongst the mountains, and the gentleman who will play the nomadic games. They have so much fun. They are such amazing horsemen. And if you're looking closely, the fellow on his own on the left, he is the referee, and he is delivering the ball in the game. Yes, it is a headless goat carcass. And it's basically a polo match where they're standing on the horses in the back. You can see the grand scale of the fields that they're playing on. The referee drops the goat. The two teams come rushing in from the side, and it's absolutely stunning to see them scoop down while on horseback, pick up this 40-pound thing off the ground, scoop it up under the leg like the referee is doing, and then the battle, the scrums, they continue until they can get it down to the other end of the field, toss the goat into the pit, score the point, and the winning team at the end of the day gets a nicely tenderized goat carcass for dinner. Plenty of great photo opportunities that day as well. We've had our final dinner, so the only thing left to do is to get you on your way home. Departures from the region are not generally tricky. Again, we're still unsure about PCR tests, region tests, all still to be fluid and flexible. Less than a half-hour drive to the airport, and a taxi clocks in at about $10 tops. It's really quite reasonable. Transfers are available though, if that's something you to make sure you get to A to B in a timely fashion. No departure about, but that does run through our changed itinerary for the 4, technically 5, but not 6 stands that we would love to make available to you for September. I am going to take down the sharing option because you'll now see that we will have questions, comments, and concerns, because this really is very much the wheelhouse of Jonathan. I have been so lucky to lead the tour, but he is truly our expert in the region. He will have his microphone on, and I will remind you to turn your microphone back on when you have questions. If you do, you'll see in the bottom center of your screen the hand that looks like that. You can click on that, and then I'll know to call on you. I will just preemptively say questions about COVID and if and or and but. We'd like to leave those to the office. We would really prefer today to talk about the meat and potatoes of the tour itself, because some things are still fluid and may change day to day. But at this point, I will stop talking at you and welcome your questions. Thank you for your patience. And I'll say, I can see, Brian, you were the first hand that popped up. Brian,
Well,
question, please go ahead.
sure, okay. And thank you for answering 18 of the 20 questions I had. So, but as far as currency is concerned, is the currency from Uzbekistan used in other countries, or can we change that first currency into the second currency? Is that okay to be done?
It is okay to be done. I'll jump in, Jonathan. It is okay because we do have our local guides who can actually help us and act as money changers. They will always give you exchanges, right? Like most countries, I wouldn't recommend you try to use it because you may not be good on your rates and things like that.
Okay. But
local guides do help us with exchange on the bus at the borders. Jonathan, I will defer to you. Go for it.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad we could join for this. Just to carry on a little bit more about the money. A lot of the tour leaders, when we are leading this tour, because each country has its own currency, we have a tendency to go back quite often. I do something with a money sheet. So leftover bits and pieces of Uzbek som or Kyrgyz som or whatever, I would collect from you at the end of that visit to that country. And then at the end of the tour, we'd come out with a balance. So maybe I'd owe you some USD by me taking on the local currency, for example, just to try and make it as easier for you as possible to not have all this extra stuff. It just seems to work out quite well. I can always use the local currency for when I'm, say, tipping the local guides or porters or whatever have you.
So, Jonathan, I suppose, and I don't know whether those currencies can be obtained here, but I suppose if it could, we'd be better off having our 5 different currencies or whatever before we leave. Would it make it a lot easier?
No, it's okay. You really don't need to do it. It's much easier. I imagine that you would actually get charged pretty high rates to try and get the currency ahead of time. It's
Okay.
very easy once you've arrived in country. As we move through the tour, it's then easy. We'll set it up for you so it's then very easy to change money once we've arrived in one of the new countries.
Okay. And that's it for the money. Another question is, we're infatuated by what we've read and seen with the metro in Tashkent. I'm wondering, we were actually thinking of getting there an extra day early and booking into the hotel, whatever it is. Is it worth it, or can it be done from that early morning till the afternoon? Or
Yes, it certainly can be done if you've arrived early in the morning, because the hotels, just as a policy, I think it's a leftover from the Soviet era. They really don't like to, even if they might have the room, they don't like to check people in early. So you were there, and if you haven't arranged for that early morning check-in, then you've got spare time on your hands. You would have time to go visit some of the highlight. It's not a huge metro line.
no? Okay.
And there are some highlight ones that we'd be able to recommend. Sometimes we have time on the Tashkent day tour to touch one or two of them, sometimes, but we
Okay.
can't count on it.
Okay.
So it would be handy coming early. If you have an extra day as well, I did live in Tashkent for almost 2 years, and there are plenty of things to go see and do that we just don't have time for on the regular Tashkent day tour.
And does the same apply to Bishkek if we decided to stay a day longer?
Okay, if you were to stay a day longer in Bishkek, let's just say that it hasn't weathered the storm after the Soviet Union fell. So it's looking a little bit down around the edges, right? And
Right.
the best thing to do if you were to have an extra day in Bishkek is with our local partner. They can arrange to do a day trip up to Al-Archa Gorge, which is in the mountains. It's beautiful. There are small hikes, bigger hikes, it's up to you, but it actually gets you into the mountains, just gives you a different perspective of something. Because Bishkek itself, what we do with our day tour, pretty much gives you a good idea of what it has to offer.
Yeah. Okay. And the last thing, going back to money, you talked about those crisp US bills, not Canadian.
Now, the USD and Euro would be the two main currencies that are used, but USD is actually still best.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay, so I did see Tori, you had your hand up there. Oh, just if Tori, if you put off your microphone, or sorry, like put on the microphone, as it were. It's currently off.
Oh, yeah.
There we are. Yep.
Off again.
There.
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So, yes, I wanted to know about the trip to the Sharin Canyon, which suggests that it's a 3 to 4 hour drive there. I know that Pam mentioned 3 hours, but it could be 4. And that means it could be 4 back, I assume. So that's 8 hours. How much time do we have actually in the canyon?
Yep. So ideally, what we would be doing is get away very early in the morning. The reason why is Almaty traffic. The rush hour starts at 7:30, 8 o'clock. We'd want to get away at 7. So then you're there by 11 o'clock, I would say, once you do a stop for halfway along for washrooms and this sort of thing. And then once we're actually in the canyon, then we would have probably 3 to 4 hours that I could imagine squeezing in. And then after that, we'd be coming back to Almaty. So it would entail a later dinner, for example. We would probably have something like setting up a picnic lunch or getting supplies that we could take with us into the canyon.
Well, lunch is another question because it's not provided here. So how is that arranged? I mean, at one point, Pamela said that sandwiches were made. Are there little kiosks where one gets something to eat? or how does it work?
Usually, we, as tour leaders, we work closely with the local guide, and we have done so. I've just found with this tour, almost all the lunches we wind up taking together, just depending where we are, because it might be the only thing available. Given for this day, it would be quite easy, I imagine, to take orders from people the day before. Maybe get samsas. Samsas are like samosas, same deal. They might have spinach, they might have different meats. So things like this that you could take. We could do a stop at the market, grab some bananas, all those sorts of things to put together a picnic. Then we get to the gorge. It'd be pretty straightforward. In fact, it would be a beautiful place to actually have a little picnic outside, I think.
And you said we leave at 7. So generally, what time does one leave in the morning?
On this tour, it really depends. And the biggest factor is typically the flights. So I can give you as an example on the day that we fly from Tashkent to Nukus. It's usually a very early morning flight in the sense that we have to get up before dark. Oh, sorry, before dawn, head to the airport, and then we arrive, we take our flight to Nukus and do our sightseeing. There are some advantages to some of the longer drives that we have on the tour, as I find from experience that people have a little nap along the way at certain points when we're driving through something that maybe isn't quite as exciting, such as you can only see so many desert dunes. But a lot of the early mornings tend to be weighted towards the start of the tour. That one just happens to be later, and that's to take the most advantage of trying to see Charon Canyon with as much time as we can.
And I guess my final question is, it seems to me that on this particular trip, because Turkmenistan is no longer there, that there's more driving, the long-term driving, than there is on the 5-stand trip. Is that correct? And
well, sorry, yeah, continue.
Well, I'm just curious because it was suggested that you're not sure whether anybody could get in to Turkmenistan. I mean, whether the group Adventures Abroad could get in there even next year. What is the difficulty?
Okay, so there are two main points to that right now.
Yes.
I'll just speak to Turkmenistan because there was a message put on by Beverly in the in-call messages. What are the chances? Well, most of what we've heard is Turkmenistan is not going to be open this year. But we can't, I mean, these are all what ifs. Unfortunately, after North Korea is probably the most opaque country you can imagine of getting details. I know only because of local contacts that they have had a problem with their economy, and COVID has probably been used as some kind of cover to some degree to let them try and sort out their house without anybody coming in, for example. Now, having said all that, we don't know if suddenly they change their mind tomorrow, but the likelihood, based on all the sources that we have, is that it's very unlikely to open to tourism until next year at the earliest. The what if question then comes up. What if they do change it tomorrow? We would revert to a regular 5 stands. Can we do it, say, in September? That's too last minute. We would have everything in place. We couldn't just show up in Tashkent and they would just say, as we're at the border, let's say, we can't suddenly have it arranged and go in, and that's just due to all the visa arrangements. Let's say if we had it changed by July, maybe, but these are so many what ifs. We're going on the idea that it will more than like 99% likely not be open until next year.
Thank you. And one final question. Do they have ATMs? I have in these countries, because I have an outdated Lonely Planet guide that says that the ATMs can chew up your cards. So And
Yeah,
that
so-
has happened to me in Latin America. So,
Okay. Uzbekistan, as of just a few years ago, they made the cash a lot more manageable as opposed to the ones that you saw. Anyway, ATMs, they have ones that work. Also, ATMs are fine now in Tajikistan, for Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. The only thing that I've found that has been an issue is if it's easier to use, say, your credit card to take out money rather than your debit card. The debit card may be chewed up as it had been for one client in Almaty, but many years ago. But it's good to have cash on hand. And the other thing in Uzbekistan is quite often the ATMs will give you a choice. Actually, it's the same in Kyrgyzstan too. You can choose to take out the local currency, or you can choose to take out USD.
oh, you can, okay. So, and do they have, I know that in Argentina, they have limits on what you can take out, and you pay a huge price to use the ATM. So is that going on here?
Not so much. It's not terrible. Not like, I haven't been to Argentina, but I suspect that there are huge fees, for example. In Uzbekistan, I have used that facility to take out USD. I think it ran at maybe 3%.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. And Catherine, hi. Oh, Catherine, just with the microphone. There we go.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. This has been wonderful.
Oh, good.
So the question I have about the luggage, I heard two messages. One, you have to be able to carry what you're bringing. And so all of my luggage except my backpacks are wheeled. So even though it's 700 meters, can we roll our luggage?
Yes. So
Okay.
to answer to the whole baggage thing, the worst and only real time that we have to deal with it where it's inconvenience would be at the borders that we go from Uzbekistan to Tajikistan, and then in this case, Tajikistan back to Uzbekistan, and then from Kazakhstan to Kyrgyzstan. So those are the land borders that we have to deal with. Because the Soviet, once upon a time, they were all this great, big, happy empire. They didn't have the same kind of border crossings, but then when they all became independent, slowly they integrated this big no man's land, let's say. And because of that, they don't have this nice interaction of a comfortable bus, usually, to take you from one side to the other. Now, it depends on that place. Where we do have to make these border crossings is essentially get to the country you're leaving, and you get stamped out. You then proceed with your bags across that walking bit of border that makes up that neutral zone. And then you arrive on the other side and they stamp you in. Is it terrible? No. It actually was worse at the Uzbek-Turkmen border, where it was 1 kilometer of Turkmen side, 1 kilometer of Uzbek side.
Was that the one where we were told to bring a little tote to carry? I still have it.
Oh yeah, probably.
To carry us overnight.
Yes. Sorry, the original
days.
itinerary. Yes, Turkmenistan. We went to a system where, because we're only there for a few nights, it was easier to actually ship the big bags onward with our Uzbek bus. But in this case, we don't have to worry about that.
Okay. The question about using the metro systems, do they use Western script? I mean, in Beijing and in Moscow, I was saved by, readable script. What's the case there?
Yeah, so Uzbekistan has defaulted to a Latin script for Uzbek, so it's very easy. It's it's easy in the sense that you can read the letters.
Right.
Not the kind of problems that you would face when.
And so we wouldn't go into a station and there's only Arabic.
No Arabic. It's all Latin script in Uzbekistan. You will see some Russian Cyrillic script.
Yeah, I know a little bit with that, really. Okay. All right. And then in the bazaars, I wasn't clear. Pamela described the bazaars. We would be going in some of them. And then she said you can, use the afternoon to go and spend time in them and do some shopping. So my sense was, if we go into the various bazaars as part of the tour, don't count on that time for shopping. Do that on the off time. Would that be correct?
That's perfectly correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I think I have one last thing. Oh, you showed one picture where, you could buy baked flatbread or things like that, and the smells. I mean, is that safe to eat?
It is. It's some of the most delicious bread that you can find. Typically on our Tashkent day tour, we're going to be at Chorsu Bazaar. They have a section which is dedicated to all the fresh bread. So we can go in, typically they invite us in, they show us the places where they're creating these wonderful works of art, as I see it. And they will quite often offer a sample. Quite often as tour leaders, we will buy, say, 3 or 4 not loaves, but discs.
Right.
And then everybody gets a chance.
And then share them around. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. And then I see Brian, you're there. Oh, Brian, and we'll just get your microphone on. There we go. Yep.
Sorry to come back again. And I don't know whether this is you guys or the office. I noticed that there were at one point, I think, 24 people on this hall. Minus you and Pam, that's 22. And I assume the people here are people who are already booked on the tour, and that's more than 18. So as more people come in, are you going to have to say sorry, or we're going to have another group? And would it be concurrent, or as in some of the other spots, one after the other, one at a later date?
So in this case, what we really wanted to do is with this presentation is try and gauge interest for those who don't want to wait to see another year. Really, it was to invite people. We wanted to say, look, given that we just don't know, this is what we would like to be able to really start to make things happen. The reason, so let me answer what you've asked. We've invited people who are booked on the tour for this year. That means that there were some who were booked for the April departure, which, it's not going to happen. It's too many restrictions still. Then we have 2 tours that people have signed up for that are going in September, but at different times. The one that is for the September 10th, so this would take the place of the September 10th tour, I believe is full or almost full. And then there are those who would be booked on a later date. And again, this will be an ability for the office at the end, once you've had a chance to sit back after the presentation, you can kind of think, okay, well, if I'm booked on the September 10th tour, you now ask yourself, do I want to stay on this even though Turkmenistan doesn't look like it's going to happen? Then you would indicate to the office and say, okay, I like what the option is given the circumstances, keep me on this, or transfer me over to this official tour code, which we're calling now ST4. And then for those who are booked on, say, the April departure or the later September departure, at that point, you might think, oh, I like the idea of this, and then you could transfer into the September 10th date. Let's now say that we fill up 18 spots of the September 10th departure and we still have extra. Then we would look at ways to then add on a second tour, whether that is for a later date. But it's just sort of, the office then has to do a little bit of juggling there to see supply and demand.
Yeah. So the reason why September the 10th is not that convenient. And I was hoping that if there were another one, and I've already talked to a couple of the people that we might be able to take that spot in the second tour if it, if it's at a later date or whatever. So, yeah.
Right. I guess we believe the ideal situation would be that we'd be able to run the September 10th departure. And yes, it would be great if we could then, so I'm talking to everyone here has been booked on the tour. We haven't sent out any of this presentation information to anybody else at this point. But it's possible that, let's say, a lot of people do want to go on the September 10th, and then we have a second tour running later in the month. We would then put out, let's say there's 6 people booked on that later departure. We put it out to the Adventures Abroad website and everything that we are offering up that tour, and then we could get people signing up. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
you, of course, it's too early to even speculate who the tour guides will be.
It is too early at this point. Obviously, we're still just coming out of Omicron. A lot of tour leaders have, as we start to get our tours running again, we'll start to coordinate who's going to be doing what based on the tours that sell, the ones that we can run. And yeah, there's a lot of juggling at play.
That's okay. That's fine. Thanks. And while I'm here, if I can take a moment to thank Pam for those two previous presentations that you made. Where are the rest of them?
I know. I actually told the office the other day too, going, I'd really love to do Cambodia, Vietnam, and but it's a bit of a wait and see who's going to be available. We don't want to get you too hungry for something and then not be able to serve you dinner. But yes, I'm excited by the challenge and would love to do some more. So yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
And sorry, Tori, I saw that you had a question there.
Oh well, yeah. I just wondered about the political situation in Kazakhstan, because I can't remember whether it was before Christmas or after Christmas where there was just this big problem with the president, and was he going to stay there or what was going to happen? And looks as if he stayed there and things have calmed down, but you never know. I mean, if Kazakhstan could be completely wiped out depending on what Russia is planning to do. Right?
Yeah, I've got my local sources in this case.
Oh yeah.
Kazakhstan's probably it was pretty stable, more stable than almost any of the others typically.
Okay.
It was more of a power play by the new president who had been, there was the old president Nazarbayev. I won't go into too many details, but let's just say that the new president didn't really want him looking over his shoulder all the time. So there was a bit of a power play to get Nazarbayev to just sit back, relax, and not try and be a micromanager anymore.
Okay.
So that's the short answer. But we're pretty confident about Kazakhstan at this point. It's just a matter of we're confident.
Great.
Okay. Sorry. And then I didn't see who had a hand up after.
Sue has been waiting for a minute.
Sorry, Sue. Sue, can you?
Yeah, hi there.
Hi.
Quite a few of my questions have already been asked, but I would like to return to the business of the actual tour.
Mm-hmm.
And if 24 or 26 people who are on this call are registered as possibilities, the possibilities are that everybody will want to go on September 10th. So if everybody wants to go and you decide to do a second tour, and this is all very nebulous, but will there be any prioritization of how people may need to be bumped into a second tour if there's too many booked? We've been waiting for 2 years. We were supposed to go on March a week after the pandemic was declared in 2020. So we've been waiting for a while, and we're sort of excited at the possibility of being able to go. But also, we may not be able to give you an answer right away because we're cautious. We're not risk takers. And my understanding is, I haven't looked into it, but some of these countries may be vaccinated, but they may have a Chinese or a Soviet vaccine. So that may make us extra cautious in holding off. But we'd like to go, but we may not book. So this is a long question. Basically, getting back to what I'd like to know is if 26 people want to go on the September 10th trip and you are forced into a situation of cutting it back to 18, which is your normal number, how will you make decisions? Will it be date-based, or how will you choose who gets to go on the September 10th trip?
Yes, that question, those questions sort of fall outside of my ability to answer.
I'm sure they do, yeah.
The office would, it'll depend on a lot of things. Again, as I had mentioned, it's going to see how many people will be signing up. If I'm not mistaken, so I've got somebody's phone call is coming through.
Okay, she's blocked her microphone. We're good.
Oh,
Thank
okay. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm afraid this is too many what ifs.
Yeah, that's true.
So the best thing that I'd recommend is with a follow-up email just to the office to state what your preference would be once you've had a time to think about it. We're not going to be putting this out on to the general public, I believe, until we get a consensus of all the people who are currently signed up. Does that make sense?
Well, I understood that to be the case.
Yeah.
But some people will be more anxious to commit than others.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as I say, we might want to hold back a little bit because we're scared of the risk.
Right.
The health risks. So, yeah, I guess all we can do then is confer with administration and see, you know, how willing they are to hold off on a firm booking. But my understanding was that as soon as you had done this presentation and had a feel for how many people want to go on September 10th, then afterwards, you know, the trip might be opened up to others. But with 26 possibilities, that's quite a few if you have to cut back down to 18 and everybody's keen on going. Anyway, yes, there are a lot of what ifs and so on, but that is a concern to me.
Okay, and so we can then pass this along as well to, of course, the office, and they should be able to help you.
Okay, now I'd like to ask another question.
Sure.
I do not like long bus trips. I'm basically a walker. I like adventure travel, but I don't want to do the stands as an adventure travel participant.
Okay.
So I'm very worried about those long trips. I can understand why a lot of people would like to go and take pictures and look at the view and so on. Sometimes on a long bus trip, that might be 5 minutes and you're sitting in the bus for hours and hours and hours. Can you give me some reassurance that there's more than just a 5-minute stretch of the legs and a photo op on these tremendously long trips?
Okay, well, what I can say is that the longer days in particular are the ones where we go from Khiva in Uzbekistan to Bukhara. It's just the nature of the distance involved. There are stops, of course, with just driving through the desert. The more, some of the other longer days in question will be the ones where we're using 4-wheel drives to go through the mountains in Tajikistan. We do plenty of stops along the way. And then at Iskanderkul Lake, for example, we have a chance to get out, stretch the legs for longer because we're actually at this beautiful lake. There are some walking trails, and we take the time to have a picnic lunch there, for example. And then there will be, of course, the Charon Canyon Day, even though it's longer to get out and back to bookend the day, we're actually going to be walking in the gorge itself, which would be probably a good 2-3 hours of walking. And then the other days in question would be part of the regular tour. So we're looking at long walking day trips within Khiva, within Bukhara. Samarkand is a bit of a mix. And yeah, just going from, it's a mix of different days, just depending on the amount of time that it takes to get us from point A to point B.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Then Chuck, I think that you've been there for a bit. Hi, Chuck.
Hi. So what is the email address that I use to respond for my preference?
Oh, let me.
Because I think you guys have several different email addresses for different uses.
Sales at Adventures Abroad.
The sales one? Okay.
Would probably be the best.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then Catherine, I saw your hand there.
Catherine, you had a question before. Did you have one once again? Because your hand's still
Just
up.
the microphone.
And just so you know, your microphone's not on.
At the end of Pamela's wonderful presentation, I mean, it was a long, so did I get it right that on the last day we leave at night?
No.
So you said, and then from dinner we go to the airport. I missed something.
It's because I had photographs after the final. I kind of ran through the whole last day, and then I showed you photographs, and then I had departures. It was the next day.
Gotcha. Okay.
We have a restaurant. If we get to use the same hotel, we have a restaurant within very close walking distance. It's really a nice night. Everybody has their final evening, and then most people leave the next morning. I did have a couple people depends on flights. I did have a couple people that did leave that night, but it was all based on their flights.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
That would be my conclusion.
And then the thing about Turkmenistan, I want to be safe. For me, I that's just really important. I don't want to go to a politically dangerous place. And then, what is Canada has an institution comparable to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the U.S.?
Yes.
Correct. Right. And of course. And so opening up this trip means that I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the Canadian version. But how do you? So you're following their guidelines that these countries are safe for us to go. Yeah. Okay.
So what?
The reason I asked the question is I have a nephew having a wedding in June, and I wanted to go, but right now Greece is code red.
Right. So again, we're looking at what ifs, but talking to our partners, like our local agencies that we work with in these countries, they've successfully been running tours this past year for Europeans. Now, generally speaking, it's easier for the Europeans, shorter distance. When they go, they just hop, they can do an Uzbek. Quite often there's a typical 10-day tour. Now, a lot of my friends who are all guides in Uzbekistan, you see them at the restaurants. People are using their personal, what's it called? You know what I mean? The masks and providing cleaners and taking the right measures that need to be in place.
Okay.
Can we go anywhere these days without some risk? Probably not. But
all right. Yeah.
We're going on the premise that we have seen the last of this Omicron wave, and things will just start to get back even closer to normal. So this is what the purpose of the presentation, again, is really we want to try and get us back to traveling. We want to do it in a way that's going to be safe for all of you. And we're just trying to take into account that we've got this X factor of Turkmenistan that has left us with, do we wait till the last minute and hope, or do we make plan B and make it something that I think would be just as interesting for all of you who have signed up?
No, that's great. Charan Canyon. Wow. That's fabulous. Thank you.
Great.
And although nobody asked, I honestly, if you had to take one out, Turkmenistan might be the one. I mean, it is, of course, I call it Turk Marbleistan because it is bizarre to see these beautiful constructions, but they don't belong there. You don't see people doing things. It's just, it's an odd spot. Does that make it more important to see or less? I just felt we were only there a couple days and perhaps it was for a reason. Jonathan has done it much more than I have, but it's a shame not to see it. It's also not a shame that that's the one you don't get to see, in my humble opinion.
Pam, I'm with you. It's very bizarre. Most of the time when I am coming back with a group from Turkmenistan, I find that a lot of the people just needed some time to process those days. Usually it's one of the busiest parts of the tour as well, with the early morning flights and so on. But again, we just don't know what's going to be happening with Turkmenistan. So this is our plan B. And Chuck, you had your hand up there.
Yes, one other question. Is the price the same for the
It is.
itinerary?
Yeah.
I didn't see any note about that.
Yeah. So the price is staying the same.
Okay.
And obviously the number of days it's the same. We just tried to keep the structure of the tour of the bookending, Tashkent, start, Bishkek, finish. We wanted to keep it the same. Just let's say there is a default where we could, Turkmenistan tomorrow opens up and says, guess what, we're opening. Again, we're not expecting that, but we just want to build in a little bit of a safety clause as it were.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Did anybody else have any other questions or concerns that Pam and I can try and help?
Good.
Great. Thank you very much, Pam, for the presentation.
Thank you for helping me on the hard questions. Wait a minute, Tori, sneaking in at the last minute. What do you got? Don't forget your microphone is off.
Oh, yep.
She's got it.
So,
oh, sorry, I think you hit it twice, Tori. Your microphone didn't come back.
sorry.
There we go.
So as I understood it, there were two trips that were being planned for one sort of middle September that was over, and there was another trip that was being planned more towards the end of September into October. Is this not the case? Is that second trip not going?
No, well, again, we're not, this is all trying to get, right? So September 10th will be our default date to try and run the tour. And then we can see, I think the next one's September 17th.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
So that's not
only a week behind.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
but that's not a definite on. That trip is not definitely on.
Well, okay. I think in this case, and again, I'm not perfectly representative of how to answer, but I believe that September 10th would be the date, since it's all, if I'm not mistaken, fully booked. And we'll see how many people who have, say, attended the presentation and are happy to go with the new itinerary. And then we can see about the second date as well. So what I think my best suggestion is this. After the presentation, you can send email, and as I just got a little message from someone, it can be to sales or consulting, or both. Indicate what your preference would be in terms of just maybe state the fact that you were booked on such and such a date and you would prefer to do ST4, for example. And then once we have the information from everybody, then we're able to put together a plan. Does that make sense?
Somewhat. My other question is, so let's say that we didn't do this trip, and I didn't realize until Catherine's question about timing that there's a long line of people who are interested in your trips, and so that she waited for 2 years to get on this trip, as I understood it. So let's say I decided I wouldn't go this year, but I want to go next year. Do I sign up now?
Well, Tori, the reason she had to wait 2 years is there were 0 trips. There weren't trips. That's why she's waited, right? That was
Oh, yes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So otherwise, if everything is all right with COVID, you are planning to run the same kind of tours. And you might be booking in 23 in the spring and possibly again too in the fall. Is that correct? And it seems to be a good idea to try to sign up for them sooner rather than later. And does that include signing up for them in 2022 for 2023?
I
I mean, given, let's say everything's okay. If it's not okay, it's not okay.
Yeah. So at the moment, so I just did get a message. So let's say you're sorry, Sierra.
I was gonna say, do you want me to chime in here?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Hi, Tori. I'm Sarah. I work in the office, and I also do all the back side of things for this trip. So I'm in charge of, booking all the accommodation and everything like that. Basically, if we have 2 full groups of people who want to go in September, or even 3 groups, let's say we open it up afterwards, we'll put those dates in place. This is like a region that, not many people have been going to. So right now it's super easy to add as many dates as we need to in the fall to accommodate the number of people we have traveling. So if you want to go, it's very likely, at least if we at least meet our minimum number, because that's more or less what we were concerned about for, offering this now 4 stands instead of 5. We weren't sure how many people would be interested in going, and it sounds like most people here are interested in doing that. So now that we know that, if we have the demand for more trips, we'll put on more trips. As for 2023, we're still offering our CA3 right now, just because we are hopeful that Turkmenistan is going to reopen. But if it's not going to reopen, we'll do the same thing. We'll just, switch out this itinerary for the future ones. It's not super full right now for 2023. We have, 5-6 people on each date, and we can add more dates as necessary. And that's what we do for this trip all the time, because it's in the past, it's been one of our most popular trips. It's usually 5-6 trips a year that are operating, even though we just start with 2 dates, one for the spring and one for the fall, and keep adding more dates as necessary.
So that means that if I decided not to go on this trip, I could go ahead and sign up for, say, the second trip in September 23, which might be a little cooler. I mean, cooler in terms of the temperature.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to go, if you want to make sure that you're going to all 5 stands, and you've decided, I'm not going to do it this year, I'm going to wait till next year or whatever, if you can't do it this year, yeah, just contact our office, and they can talk you through the transfer and everything like that. And if we don't have the date right now for a later September date, you can just transfer to the first September date, and if we add a second one, you can transfer then to the second date if you prefer to go later.
Okay, thank you. You all have been very patient with my questions, and I appreciate it.
No worries.
Thank you.
Any other comments or concerns? If anybody is getting bored, I have seen a couple people click out. We will not be offended. You're allowed to run. But of course, we're here. If anybody has more questions, we're happy to chime in. All good and understood. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being a part of the broadcast. It's lovely to see faces, and very encouraging to hear the interest and see the interest. Especially if there's extra departures, then I might get my chance to go back. So cool. Thank you very much for being a part of it. You saw the sales and or consulting. Feel free to send off a question for anybody, and hopefully we'll see you in the stands.
Great. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everyone.